There were a couple of cases that really brought it home locally. One of the cases was a Hickman High School student who was trafficked as a minor. She was trafficked by a husband and his wife. She had run away from Soul House, which is a teen shelter. She was in foster care, so she wasn't connected with her mom, and she ran away and went to sleep at Douglas Park. And a man and a woman approached her and offered her a place to stay in exchange for her babysitting their kids. And that seemed like a viable option to her rather than being on the streets. So she went with them, and there really were kids in the house, and so she really thought she was going to help babysit them. And they ended up drugging her and taking all of her belongings and stripping her down of all her clothing and forcing her into prostitution. So as a minor, she was victimized in sex trafficking right here in Columbia. And then there was another case, a woman in Lebanon, Missouri. This was a pretty gruesome case of sex trafficking. She was tortured. She was kept in the basement of the home of the traffickers for several years, and she was kept in a cage. And she was forced to dance at strip clubs. They did some pretty horrible physical torture to her, and her case was also in the news, and it was pretty tough stuff to read. As people have become more concerned, there's a lot of outrage at traffickers. How can people do that? Do terrible things to them? And they say, that's awful for victims. When people wonder, what can I do? We always say, you can make different choices. In Columbia has a lot of opportunities for buying fair trade. This is actually a surprisingly rich community for fair trade. The Museum of Art and Archaeology has fair trade. The church there's a global market store within a church here locally, and there's another church that has fair trade in their store. There's one in a neighboring town, Sassafras Moon, that has fair trade. And so we make people aware of that and just encourage them to make those choices, and that those are products that either help sustain a livelihood of people who've been brought out of trafficking, or provide them with a viable means of earning money and supporting themselves and their families. We like to promote the fair trade stores in this area, and we've had partnerships with Global Market and Root for a number of years, and we just appreciate that in this town there are products that have a direct tie-in to people who have a different way to support themselves without having to face trafficking or being put in a vulnerable situation. The other thing we tell people is to buy local. Also buying at, this is a great town for farmers markets, and that's another way to know that those other kinds of products that aren't like packaged, that are sold, that their supply chain is just involving our local farmers, and we also encourage that. We think that can make a difference too. Sometimes it's just making people aware. At least being aware, it makes you a better citizen in my mind.